So yeah, so I can't hear anybody. So hello, my name's Mary-Cate, and I'm so sorry we can't get my camera to working today. So you're going to have my lovely dulcet Northern Irish tones sweeping around you. So I work at Barts Health in the East End of London. We're the largest NHS trust with 16,000 staff employed directly, 24,000 if you count our partners. Um, and we deliver healthcare to 1.5 million people in the East End of London. So I'm here today to tell you about the Shielders project, which was working with Barts staff who were identified as clinically vulnerable and therefore shielding under the pandemic. So we've got a few slides and presentations with you today. Do you want to say hello, Sarah?
Yeah, hi, my name is Sarah and I'm one of Mary-Cate's shielders, and I shielded for almost 5 months, but you'll hear a little bit about that later on.
Another Irish person, and of course Sarah belongs to me because I own the Shielders. But anyway, just want to let's go to the next slide, Rachel. We're going to do some tech learning. So if everybody could type in your name and your job role and what one word describes where you are right now. So well, that's interesting. I don't know how to chat. Oh, so that's really interesting, Rachel. You're going to have to help me understand how I can open up the chat.
Okay. What can you see at the moment?
I can see participants, so I've managed to open the participants.
Yeah.
Chat, I've got it.
Have you got it? It's up the top. Yeah. There's a little. Can you see them? Otherwise, I can.
I can't see any. I can't see it. Yeah.
Okay. So if you just bring your. It depends. I can't see your screen, so I'm not sure what you can see. But on the toolbar, there's either more, where there's a chat. You can get chat up there, or I can. For the time being, I could just read them to you.
Yeah. How many have we got? We've got 17 participants.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, and we've got 6 people who have messaged.
So that's good. So that's a QI statistic. Yes. 6 out of 18. So we're counting all of these. So what's your name, your job role, and what one word describes where you are right now? So I've chosen 2. I'm not going to arm wrestle anybody about 2 words, just so that we can get people active on the chat. So we do this to help people come along with the tech that we need. So I'm still not seeing the chat. So
okay, let me, just because I'm screen sharing your presentation, it's difficult for me to see some of the stuff as well. So shall I read out to you what people have written, or
Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah. So we've got Dave.
Sarah could probably do it while you're screen sharing. Can you do that, Sarah?
Okay? I can't see the chat either, so just continue.
Right,
well, go ahead. Go ahead.
So we've got Dave, project manager, DAMP. We've got Jade, admin, tech guru. Avril, project coordinator, home. Claire, senior commissioning officer at home. Linda, an OD practitioner, evolving. Got Mary-Cate, senior change manager, freaking out. Anna, midwifery lecturer, tired. And that's it.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And it's really helpful just to sort of get people active in the chat. So we're going to try, I think we'll skip the next slide, Rachel. We were going to do some tech learning about where people are, about annotating, but I think that's quite hard. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you through an exercise. So I'm going to ask you to grab a pen and a piece of paper or pencil. And I want you to draw a cross in the middle of the pen and the piece of paper. So just as we've shown in that, you've got a dotted line and a piece of paper, and you've got a cross in the middle of it. And I'm going to ask you to draw a spiral as slowly and as tightly as possible for 2 minutes when I set the clock. So I'm going to set the clock so nobody needs to worry. And just focus on drawing your spiral as tightly, as slowly as possible. So I'm going to mute myself so that if you hear snoring dogs or anything, I don't disrupt you. So the timing starts now. Last 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, Rachel, if you could go to the next slide. Rachel, can you hear me? Hi, Rachel.
Rachel's on mute.
So, if we can move to this next slide, Rachel, that would be great. Slide before you've gone on to the second slide, go back one. Oh, okay. So you'll have to go to the next one then. So that's fine. So in the top left-hand quadrant, I want you to write, when I think about the beginning of lockdown, I remember. And I'm going to time you, so don't worry, but I'm going to give you a minute to just scribble all the things that you remember about the beginning of lockdown. So last 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, stop. Okay. So in the top right-hand quadrant, I want you to write the thing that was hardest at work taught me. So the thing that was hardest at work taught me. So again, I'm going to give you a minute to maybe write down what the hardest thing was and then what it taught you. So I'm going to give you 1 minute starting now. Last 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Next slide, Rachel, please. So in the bottom right quadrant, I want you to write, if I could go back to that time, the things I would do are ... So again, I'm going to give you another minute to just make notes for yourself. Go ahead. So last 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So if we just want to go on to the next slide. So in the very bottom left quadrant, I want you to write, thinking about my team right now, preparing for a second surge. So in preparing for a second surge, if I was 15% braver. So thinking about your team, preparing for a second surge, if I was 15% braver, I would ... And again, I'm going to give you a minute. So go. The last 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So I'm just going to give everybody a few seconds to look back over what you've written. Just circle out the things that are standing out as important to you. I'll give you 30 seconds to just review what you've written and circle what's important to you. So this is where the chat function now comes in. So I want people to type in the chat, what did that exercise make possible for you? So going through that exercise, what did it make possible for you? So this is definitely a participation workshop. So Sarah, are you able to, you can't see the chat either. Rachel, what's happening in the chat? So I don't know whether Sarah, you
I can hear you. I don't know if anyone else can hear you.
Oh, you're joking.
I don't know.
I can hear you, Mary-Kate, too.
Oh,
Excellent.
perfect.
We're not
Thank you.
alone.
We're not alone. I suddenly thought I've done a spiral journal for me and Sarah. So I wonder if Rachel's, she can obviously move the slides, but maybe she can't chat because she's not chatting to me. I think we'll just keep going. That lovely person who jumped in to rescue me and Sarah and let us know that we're not alone. Can you see the chat?
I can only see part of the chat.
Thank you. I can
Rachel
see.
is-
So Dave is emailing me privately, so I can see private emails, which is great. So I'll give you a time to reflect, Dave. That's amazing. So if people want to privately chat to me, then I can see that and I'll shout it out. That's probably the easiest thing. The other person that jumped in, can you see some of the chat? Do you want to call out some of the chat for me and Sarah? I can see it. People are so okay. So it makes you tap into what's important, Nicole. Thank you for sharing that. So what we can do with the chat is we're going to be able to download it afterwards. So we'll definitely be able to share it with the slides. But there is a bit later on where I'm going to be asking questions. If anybody else wants to type in what did that make possible for them? Okay. So we've just taken you through one exercise that we would have done with the shielding group, and I'm going to do another one. So I'm going to, do you want to go to the next slide, two down, Rachel? So can Rachel move the slides on? So what we could do is we could Rachel, if you can hear me, you could stop sharing your screen and we can go to Sarah. I'm not sure. So Dave, I think, is doing tech. So Dave, if you could tell me what's going on with Rachel, that would be amazing. And Sarah and I is just going to plow on. So Sarah, I don't know whether you can you get control of the screen, Sarah, by any chance?
No, I've got no control of anything.
Okay, so Sarah's given me a thumbs up, I think. So if Sarah can go on to if Rachel can go on to the second.
Oh, there you go. She's moving.
There we go. Go back to the chair. Go back to the chair. Go back to the chair.
Oh.
So I'm going to introduce you, Sarah, and Rachel back. Yeah, that one. Yeah, perfect. So, Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Sarah and I am a radiographer based at the Royal London. I currently run dental imaging, and in March I became one of many shielders, not just for the trust but nationally. I was lucky enough to win COVID bingo, as I like to say, so there was many reasons why I had to shield, and then luckily enough I found Mary-Cate and her shielding group, which we will talk about now.
So tell us what was important for you in that spiral journal, Sarah. What if you could go through your quadrants, that would be amazing. So when you think about the start and the beginning of lockdown, what was happening for you at that point?
At the start of lockdown, I refused to lock down. I think, like lots of people, we thought it would be short, so I continued to go to work. But the feelings that the spiral journal brought up was I was scared, frustrated even, defiant, because I still went to work despite me getting 2 letters, because I felt guilt, not towards those that I worked with, that I was getting sent home, but they had to go and face frontline activities. And I think unless you're in that situation, it's really hard to describe, because you want to be there, but you know that it's not safe for you to be there. And the reason I eventually went home to Shield was because one of the clinical directors said to me he didn't sleep all weekend worrying about me, and he really wanted me to go home, and this was on a Monday. And I think I realized the impact of me being there was more for them than for me, so I went home. So that's sort of what brought up.
That's interesting. So what happened then for you when you went home, if you can sort of think back to then, what was it like then to sort of then be disconnected from your NHS family and the
Yeah, so I
fight?
lived on my own, and I lived away from my friends. I don't have family here, so it was really isolating and quite scary because you didn't really know what to do. And I didn't feel connected to the trust because everybody was obviously really busy. And my friends were really busy working frontline. So you couldn't really describe what it was like to be at home alone because people didn't understand. They thought you were just at home watching Netflix and having a great time.
Mm,
But that was the complete opposite of most people who were shielding.
mm.
So yeah, it was really difficult without complaining about it being difficult.
So tell us then the thing that was hardest and what it taught you, the thing that was hardest about sort of being a shielder or being in the shielding group or whatever came up for you.
I think the hardest thing was not being present physically at work and feeling disconnected to, what was clearly the hardest time anyone was going through. And so we needed a support mechanism that sort of it made us part of a solution and not a problem, because we weren't there. It didn't mean that we couldn't work and help and do other stuff that maybe wasn't our normal job. And the shielding group provided us with a network of people and jobs and opportunities so that we could, stay part of the trust and part of a family and a group, and made our own support through the pandemic.
So what did it teach you?
That you don't physically have to be somewhere to be part of a group, I think. I would never have had a virtual meeting in my life before this, and now you could be millions of miles away from somebody but actually be really connected. And the shielding group, we met for the first time a couple of weeks ago, but we have become best friends in 7 months. It's a very strange, bizarre world to never see anybody from the waist down but know them really well.
We were really surprised at how tall George was, weren't we? We were like, oh my God, George is massive.
The first thing we said to everyone is, oh my God, you've got legs. So,
So what did it teach you about yourself?
that I'm more sociable than I ever thought, and how much I really do need to feel connected. I was quite shy. Mary-Cate won't believe this, but I was quite shy at the start, and she actually had to force me into becoming part of the Shield group, which I'm forever grateful for. But it also showed me that, being chronically sick or, as say, a life-limiting condition doesn't make you less of a team or less valid in the NHS, and we should use that for the experience that we have that others may not have.
So if you could go back, what would you have done? What was on your list about things that you would have done now that you've got 2020?
I'd definitely be more prepared. I would have taken heed of everyone who was out bulk buying, because I did none of that, and then had a panic that I was going to starve to death. But also I'd be less against sort of the process of going home and shielding, and understanding that it is a support for me and the right thing to do. But I also think I would sing the praises of shielders all around the place before now from the start, and get us more involved in other activities, whether it's admin or non-clinical work that we could have done from home. I think if we had our time all over again, we would have knocked on the door of everywhere day one and said, look, we can do this for you. How many people do you need?
Yeah, to be a bit more, so if you were 15%, so yeah, I would agree with that, isn't it, that we would have not been quite so we'd have gone knocking and said, give us jobs, jobs
because
to
there's
people.
so much stuff that people needed done, but they didn't have people to do it. Yet there was so many people at home desperate for something to do, so that they felt part of it. Because every Thursday evening we clapped for everyone else, but we felt we weren't part of that. And we would have loved to have been part of it in some way.
Yeah, I can remember like the number of times PPE policy has been rewritten, IPC policy, all of those things, isn't it, that took people's time who were at work, that shielded staff could have helped with if we'd have thought about it. So now that we're preparing for a second surge, if you were 15% braver, what would you do?
I would speak up more about the support that Shielders can offer everyone. And it doesn't necessarily have to be even admin or paperwork. It could be support for staff who are finding things difficult at work. There's always somebody sitting at home who could answer a telephone and have a chat, because some of the things that people have seen and done and witnessed, they just need someone to talk to. And, you know, Shielders have a different perspective on the pandemic, but we have the opportunity to help in any way we can. And, you know, sort of, if I was 15% braver, I'd ask for more tech and, you know, more opportunities, but, you know, I'm not that brave.
Well, we might find you some, who knows. I forgot to say to people that actually they could type questions to me so that I could have fed Sarah questions. So I'm going to let people type some questions to me privately, and then I'm able to see that chat. I don't know why I can't see the conversations to everybody, but there we go. That's so. If people want to email me, they absolutely can, or text the chat to me. And I guess I just want to sort of say thank you, Sarah, for being our celebrity interview. What we've done in this first part of the session is try to take you as a group, however silent that you are as participants. We've tried to sort of take on a bit of a process using two techniques that we've used in two of our different spaces. So the spiral journal is a technique for reflection, as Dave pointed out, and we've used that in our Connect space. And the celebrity interview we've used a lot in our Next Steps space. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about those in a minute, but we wanted to take you through it to let you have an experience about what it was like. And the whole tech drama is what we've done every week, several times for months on end. And actually, it's what the NHS needs to do, and it's okay when tech goes wrong because we're all learning from it. So there's something about recognizing that we can't be perfect in the tech. We've just got to work out where we are. So at this point, I'm hoping that all the participants are still able to hear us and that the recording is happening. But we'll see. We'll do it again if that doesn't happen. So, Rachel, if you could move on, that would be great. To the next slide. Yeah. So, oh, that's gone a funny, very small. So, Sarah, I'm going to ask you to intervene at different points as well. No, you can go to that slide. That was okay. Just put issues and tissues part 1 is very small. So I'm just up in the very top corner. So what I'm going to try and do is try to talk you through our thinking and our learning for the last 7 months. So initially, the sort of what was the issue part 1 was really about this sort of whole scale move into a virtual world. So Barts has about 2,500 staff that work in corporate services. They were all sent home overnight. Shielding staff were sent home overnight, apart from Sarah, who fought for another week and a half to stay in, or however long it was, Sarah. Anybody who was senior, the executive boards and things like that, lots of people were sent home. And we were really challenged with technology. Very few of us have trust laptops, but we were suddenly trying to recreate a purpose and meaning of our roles in the NHS in a virtual role. And actually, I didn't go looking for Shielders. I was interested in what do we do in this virtual space, and how can we connect. And I was really conscious about the importance of social capital and how social networks is a really important preventative factor for mental health and well-being, and that a really important social network is your work family. And in the NHS, your work family are like your best friends. You know, anybody who's done frontline services, it's 4 o'clock in the morning on a night shift that you suddenly find out loads of things about people, about your best friends. So your work family is critical. And not having that, and the work family is connected via physically sharing space. And if we suddenly stop sharing space with people, and people are being redeployed or people are at home, that preventative factor, when we are facing the biggest crises that probably the NHS as a total has faced ever in its existence, really, since 1948. Obviously, there was a 1918 pandemic. It just struck me that we've got to get really good at doing this really quickly, because there is definitely like mental health trauma coming. So that's where my headspace was at. And I'm in I like a technique called liberating structures. So we're going to talk about that as well. So there's a meetup group that met up at the end of March virtually instead of in face to face, which is normally what we do. And I just went, oh my God, this is what we need. So I started to try to do those sessions, and a really clever ward manager brought along a shielding member of staff, and she said to me, I'm really worried about this person. She's really smart, she's really sparky, but she has to shield, and she's only been a nurse for 6 months. And she was the person who said, Shielders is the place that you want to go. So that's why we followed Shielders, because this person put down little breadcrumbs and said, this group really needs something. I'm dragging my hair out at home. I don't know what to do. So then when we sort of understood that that's where we were going to focus our energies, the sort of second issue that we're facing is digital literacy. So that's about actually how individual people are confident with the digital thing. So I was late getting on because I got panicked trying to follow the instructions, even though I've done this quite a lot now. And each and every session for the first 6 or 7 weeks, it was people not being able to follow the instructions. And I was working with external partners, so we'll come to them in a bit, who have a lot of digital literacy. So there was a real car crash between those two things. But also then, on top of that, the NHS infrastructure is not ideal. So I think some of the mental health trusts who have lots and lots of little blobs of services where you've got a small centre with lots of sort of outreaches and tentacles, like, I don't know, not even like an octopus, because that does have a big centre, but you know what I mean. Their ICT and digital infrastructure is much better because they expect people to be working between a lot of sites. Whereas if you're in an acute trust like ourselves, which has got 5 hospitals and a corporate building, we just do everything face to face. So our infrastructure lends itself to that. So as I said, we didn't even have laptops. Communicating with the shielders was really challenging. We didn't have a really great list of who was on it because the list was kept on health roster, and technically I won't go into the reasons, but health roster only allows people to have one status. So if I was taking annual leave, I would stop shielding and I'd go on to annual leave and then I'd come back. So we had this constant problem with communication. And also working with NHS partners. So trying to find a platform that everybody could use, sharing documents, all of that was stuff that we needed to work through. Then when we sort of got live and we got regular people coming in, what we were challenged about was how we managed the group. So in every group, there's going to be group dynamics, and sort of like some people need brought out and encouraged to speak, and some people need, to be encouraged to have a bit of thinking and reflection time. But there was also real discrepancies in how people were experiencing the work from home. So some people had really great support from managers. Some people were really busy. Some people could transition their whole work to home. And obviously that lends itself much more to senior managers. And then other people were not having any contact with their managers at all, or sort of feeling completely isolated. Their team had been redeployed, or their team was sort of completely on the front line. So that created challenges in the group as well, where people would complain about their manager and then hear this experience of somebody else having a great experience with their manager. So how we managed that was really important too. And the group needed different spaces. So we sort of had this one space that we were meeting, and we were realizing that people were coming needing lots of different stuff. And how did we evolve and work with that? And then there was managing expectations. So there was managing expectations between our external partners, as well as sort of what people wanted to do in the group. So some shielders wanted to sort of like have this conflict and fight with managers and HR. And some people were sort of feeling very isolated and, like really in need of emotional support. So there's lots of different things going on. But also then there was managing the expectations of our external partners and our internal partners. So I was very conscious about going, we've got 600 members of staff that we need to be reaching. And some of our facilitators were going, we've had a really amazing session. And I would be like, yes, it's great, but there was only 40 people there, or 20 or 10 or whatever. So this feels like a bit of a wave. And Sarah, I'm going to give you a second to sort of like just reflect on what I'm saying, because this is my learning. This has been a bit of a wave for me. And then sort of the next set of learnings was that when the risk assessment, when we realized that COVID was impacting different communities and different staff groups differently, You know, every trust, every organisation had to get a local risk assessment to try to identify people who weren't shielding but maybe needed to, or actually who needed to be sort of given different PPE or removed from the front line or whatever. So shielding staff had to go through that too. But then there was also how that was experienced with their staff. Some people got referred to our occupational health service, employee wellbeing, and just you know those differences. Then there was the whole challenge of the emergent policies. Like I can tell you because I worried the whole weekend when I heard it. The government announced at 10 o'clock on Saturday night that shielding was going to pause on the 3rd of August, and that was like maybe on the 17th of July or something like that. So making that announcement at 10 o'clock at night was just insane. It meant that I was then working all the next day. And everybody in the NHS will have conversations about actually how they were trying to respond to things really rapidly to give reassurance or guidance or structure to staff, and how, you know, 5 days later that changed or it evolved, and how challenging it was to give people certainty, because that's what people wanted. But actually, we were in an uncertain chaos, and it was, we couldn't give certainty. We just had to keep saying to people, we're trying to do our best. And also, then the other thing that I would notice is there was a real challenge in the group about bereavement and loss. So Sarah talked about how difficult it was for her to leave her NHS family and go home. And it only went home when she realised the impact on her colleague about how worried her clinical lead was. So there was the bereavement and grief and loss that was about not being part of the NHS family at the most significant time of our history. Like I would say to people, I'm like a Blackpool stick of rock. You break me in half and it says NHS through the core. And everybody, or, you know, 85, 90% of people who work in the NHS will say, yeah, like, that's what I am. So there was that, but also working in London with a very BME community, who we've got a very, very significant overseas program. So we've got overseas nurses from the Philippines, we've got nurses from the Caribbean, we've got nurses from, you know, the Asian subcontinent. We've got a really diverse set of immigrant NHS workers like myself. I'm first generation, but I've been here donkey's years as well. So they were connected into how the pandemic was rolling out in other countries, and especially people who had family in America. Lots of people lost family members, and that was very live and is still live in the group about how like cultural rituals cannot be followed and things like that. So that's really live in the group, and it was something that I didn't really foresee. And then sort of we're now back in this next wave of sort of issues for me is about the narrative about shielders and about actually, you know, how people say, did you enjoy your holiday and things like that. So this understanding about the sort of psychological impact on shielding staff members is not really fully fully in the space yet. And I think there's a lot of people, like people who've been working from home. I think we have to sort of create these multiple narratives that are existing in the NHS, that not everybody fought in the front line. Babies were still being born. People still fell off bikes and broke their leg. But actually, everybody was supporting the NHS through that struggle. We're currently looking at IPC, infection control risks, for the shielders that are back, and thinking about how do we sort of do some work around that, trying to understand, you know, what happens to shielders when you're in a tier 3 lockdown. So trying to sort of speak to people in Manchester and Lancaster and Liverpool to sort of see what they're doing has been really challenging, but something we're really interested to do. And also then lots of people have gone back and we've seen our numbers going down. So what is the offer that we need to give now to support shielders through this next stage? Because they're still clinically vulnerable, even though shielding has paused. And then capacity. So I'm the only full-time member of staff who's on it. All the shielding staff who've helped me have gone back mostly to work. So thinking about that. So just paying attention to time. Sarah, is there anything you wanted to offer on this slide?
Just to say that, you know, when shielding was happening, before the ending of shielding, we'd all kind of got into sort of a routine of it. And then for lots of people who didn't have good support, you were just told this is your ALMA score of whatever, now you must go back to work, but none of us actually really understood what that meant. And we actually had a group where we would text each other joking what our score was, because we didn't really realize the significance of it. And we've tried to, with a campaign, to make shielding staff much more visible within the trust. We've tried to make it that it's as safe as possible. We appreciate we all have to go back to work if we have to. It's just how everybody makes it safe. So you know, we've gotten involved in other campaigns, which I think Mary-Cate will talk about later.
Yes, we will. I'll go on to the next slide. Nicole has emailed me to just say that actually, like, everybody's, like, she's just made a comment about, like, we're all trying our best with tech, but also, like, we're all trying our best, try to make sense through all of this, and everybody's getting out of bed every day to try to do their best, and that we're all sort of assimilating this life experience differently. And that's a really good notice, like how people. I was talking to a pharmacy lead on Monday, and like, it's only now that we're talking about the second surge that she suddenly went, oh my God, I've suddenly realized how much the first surge has cost me. But before that, I was like firing on all cylinders. So it comes at people at different ways. Rachel, can we go to the next slide? This is just that's just about me telling you about numbers. So it's, as I say, like, it's 161 at the Royal London. It's small numbers when you understand that we've got 16,000 staff, but really significant for those staff members individually. So 650 is, I think, don't know. Next slide. I'm not going to do the maths. Next slide. So let me just try to explain conceptually what we've tried to do. So there's a sort of core group of shielders, as I said, that sort of like got redeployed to support me through this. So there's 6 core members. There's Claire, who in her day job is a sexual health counsellor. There's Sarah, who in her day job is a radiographer. Fidelia, who is a matron at Foots Cross. There's Fazana, who was a receptionist. George, who was a staff nurse. And then we were supported in that by this wonderful woman called Alexis Palla from the Y Lab in Wales. But I met her via the Liberating Structures community, and David Heath, who organises, Alexis organises Liberating Structures Cardiff, and David organises Liberating Structures London, and they've pulled in Liberating Structure facilitators to help us. So in that space, what we've done, if you look on the left-hand side, thinking the connect space is the blue bob, and that's, we meet every Monday, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And that is a space to connect and gain social support. So from that, we recognized that sort of communication and networking was really important. So different people just came up with ideas and went, yeah, I can do that. So somebody, as I said, it was really challenging for us to get in touch because the list kept changing. So somebody said, I manage the patient transplant Facebook page for another London trust. Other London trusts are available. Do you want me to manage a Facebook page? I was like, oh my God, that's amazing, because that is not something, social media is not something I'm very good at. So they've gone off and done that. Somebody else has done a newsletter. And the newsletter, what shielding staff were telling us is that actually switching on their emails was really stressful. Because if you were having a difficult relationship with your manager, sometimes that would be a place where you would get difficult emails, or people would be emailing you for stuff or whatever that you couldn't do. So it was a really difficult and anxiety provoking space. So the newsletter sort of came about to respond to that. So the newsletter talks nothing about work. It shares recipes, it's pictures of dogs, it's what books am I reading, it's different shielders telling a little bit about themselves, and it's just a really glorious thing to get on a Friday, really, you know, empowering words and stuff like that. So somebody else set up a choir. I've talked about it as a choir a bit too often, and my chief exec says, oh, I'd really love to hear the choir. And when I say that to the choir, they're like, oh no, we're not singers. It's more like a singing space where people can just laugh and sing badly. And then there's the Shield Us campaign, Sarah. So do you want to talk about that? I haven't got another picture actually about Shield Us.
That's okay. So there's a national campaign called #ShieldUs1, which is trying to get shielders sort of more recognised on a national government level. And we got involved because they did lanyards and badges. So we designed a fluorescent orange, I can't describe how fluorescent it is, lanyard that says, please give us space, with the shielding emblem on it and matching badges. And I sent out about 600 of them to all of the shielders, so that they had a pack which told them all about the choir and Facebook, and that gave them the lanyards, so that they felt that, you know, they had something tangible to bring to work, so that people understood that they were shielders. And so we did that. And I have been campaigning with TfL London to try and get the symbol recognised on the tube and transport, so that you know, other people who don't necessarily work for the NHS but who have to travel on public transport can kind of get a badge, like the baby on board badge or the please offer me a seat badge. So that's the Shield Us campaign that we are working tirelessly to get recognised.
Mm. And again, that was something that Sarah and another one of our shielders picked up, because it's really important, and they recognise that as important about being visible. So it gives people a choice about whether they want to be visible, because that's, you know, that's also a consideration, that not everybody wants to be visible. So from the Barts Shield staff, we pulled out Sarah and, as I say, 6 or 7 people who became the Barts facilitators. So they did training on liberating structures online, and they have run online workshops for various different groups, and were particularly active during what we call Harvest the Learning, which was our a learning stage of trying to capture the learning from the Surge 1. So we did facilitations. There's an X over that one. That was a business unit, which we, as Sarah says, we'd have been much more demonstrating and demanding about knocking on people's doors to try to say to people, we want to do work for you. Come and commission us to rewrite your policy or to phone patients or whatever it is. The next steps, as I say, the next steps is we do a lot of celebrity interviews in the next step. So we've had our head of employee wellbeing come and explain the ALAMA score that Sarah talked about earlier. We've had the head of infection control come and talk about zoning and the sort of current IPC guidance and things like that. We've had our psychologists come and talk about what is fear and what is anxiety, and is being fearful in a pandemic the appropriate response. God, what else have we've had the head of employee relations, so head of HR policy writers, come and explain all about the risk assessment policy and things like that. So the next step space is supported and facilitated by the head of employee relations, and our trade union reps and our Barts Ability staff network comes into that space as well. So that's a really good way of people making connections, and they come with specific queries or questions that they need answering, and then connect us there again. So the other things that we've supported the trust in is about running these other workshops. So we've done a hematology workshop with clinicians and patients about virtual support and what does that look like. We've done a Harvest of Learning. We've done manager training with the support of the HR team. We're trying to develop space for our Band 7 matrons and Band 7 managers in Royal London to replicate the connection space. Radiography, that was yours. So there's a whole range of stuff that we've done like that. So there's the blue spot is really about how people can just come into the space and get the support and connection that they need. And then there's other people who become more active and more involved in terms of actually trying to deliver stuff on the programme, deliver that specifically to shielders and building that response, but also sort of offering support to other parts of the organisation. So next slide, Rachel. As I'm saying, anybody wants to put questions in, please do that. And I'm realizing that I'm a minute off time, but let's try and whiz through. So you can see the slides. This is what we've done. This is just about telling you in numbers what we've done in 28 weeks. And that was probably 2 weeks ago where we were submitting something. Thing that I've noticed about our external partners, they're really good at understanding how much input stuff needs. So how much time and staff hours. So that's been a really interesting learning for me. Let's do the next slide, Rachel. So this is our aim. This is another learning for me. So this is an aim that our Alexis at YLab wrote. which I think is really beautiful, because it's not an aim that an NHS organisation would ever write. We would write, we want to increase the number of attendees from 15 to 100 in the next month. So we'd try to write smart aims, or we'd be reducing something or increasing something. So I just want to share that, because I think it's really beautiful, but it's not our writing or our language. So that's the other way about working with non-usual partners. Your own learning is really stretched. So the next slide, Rachel. So the blue is just quotes that Shielders have said to us, really, about us trying to really sort of get the significance of what we've done in the space. And I've, as I say, I've put in 2 quotes in pink there, which is the way we've tried to bring different parts of the organisation together in virtual spaces to respond to anxieties, fears, demands, needs. So I just wanted to share that. And then the next slide. Yeah, this was our hematology sickle cell patient and clinical workshop. We did down in the left-hand side, that's an eco-cycle. So that's a different liberating structure that we used there. And we were trying to understand and bring together the different narratives. So our consultants were desperate to get patients back into the building. And patients with sickle cell and other blood disorders, as you can imagine, we're not comfortable and confident about coming in. So there's something about trying to have conversations with both clinicians and patients about actually what can we do in the virtual space for them. And that was supported by, that was myself and another 2 people on the facilitators program who helped me. Next slide. I think we're nearly at the end. So just wanted to talk.
Sorry, it's my fault. I've just got sound back. We do have to wrap up in like a minute.
This is my last slide. I just want to shout a big thank you to YLab Wales, which is where Alexis works, and they've basically given us her like 2 or 3 days a week since late April. And they are a collaboration between the University of Wales and Nesta, which is about supporting and innovating public sector services in Wales. And they've, in their COVID help, offered help to us, and they've been amazing. And Happy Computers gave lots and lots of NHS staff members free training. So I hope some of you've been able to get that. That's there if you want a link. So I just want to give a big shout out to Henry, because he's been amazing to NHS staff over the pandemic. He's given lots and lots of free training. And then to just talk about liberating structures and the facilitators, David, Dan, different people who've come to help us get confident with those things. So I think that's the last slide, but just double check. That's the last slide. That's us. That's our trade union reps. That's our HR people. That's our Shielders. That's our liberating structures facilitators. And that, as Sarah says, that's us meeting socially distanced, 5 of us outside the Royal London 2 weeks ago, and 2 people couldn't join us, so they've been photographed in. So that's us. That's us. The Barts Shielding project at Barts Health. Any final? Can I give Sarah a final shout out? Anything you want to say, Sarah, or just share?
No, that's good. My email's on the presentation, so if anybody has any questions, they can just contact me.
Thank you so much. I think I've got my mute. I'm unmuted now. Sorry, my computer froze. So I'm sorry I was absolutely no help during all of that, apart from being able to do the slides. I'm so sorry about that, but I'm glad we got through. I have to wrap this up and start with a new session, but I just wanted to thank you so much for bearing with us and for a great presentation. I'm sorry it was a bit finicky to the start.
Absolutely fine. It's all learning that we have to do as the NHS. So I hope your day goes smoother. And thank you for your service, Rachel. Thank you for your support as well.
No, thanks for being so patient. Thanks,
everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.